Welcome back to the Electrician Growth Podcast. This is the place where we bring on successful electrician business owners. We talk to them about their stories, their lessons, and how they're managing their businesses. If you would like to apply to be a guest on the Electrician Growth Podcast, you can go to our website at theelectriciangrowthpodcast.com, fill out the application, and if we think you're a good fit, we'll reach out and you could be on the show next. Now, guys, today we have Josh. Josh, how's it going?
It's going well. Good to be with you, Kevin.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking the time. I think just quickly, please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and how did you get started in the electrician space?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Josh. I am an owner of United Electrical Systems. We operate in the San Francisco Bay Area. We do residential and commercial work. We focus on light commercial. And let's see, how did I get into the business? I have a background in electrical, kind of in multiple ways. I started as an electrician actually on the 787. So I worked for Boeing, building airplanes. A little bit different, but still wires, still electricity. From there, I went to school, studied electrical engineering, held some engineering roles at Boeing, and then I went back to school and then did some grad school and did a master's in electrical and then an MBA as well. Um, I switched over to tech and um, worked for some of the big tech cos. There's a big marketing component there, and at the same time, as I was getting my MBA, then I picked up this kind of entrepreneur's bug. So I've done a few things kind of on the entrepreneurial side, and um, you know, over a year ago, I was talking with some business partners, and we were like, you know, like the aim had been build some sort of scalable uh, tech, right? Which is usually an app. And usually the app was like about saving your pictures or something like that, right? Keeping them private, making them disappear, whatever, putting some filters on there. Um, Not really my thing. And it's that type of industry is very kind of home run, right? It's a winner take all industry. Um, the electrical industry, the construction trades it's highly fragmented, which is good and bad, right? Like if you want to grow and become a unicorn, $1 billion company or more, right? It makes that more challenging. Economies of scale aren't quite there, right? But it makes it a lot easier to get into, right? Barring the licensing and some of the other things. So, we looked around and we said, okay, barriers to entry are low. Um, and there are a lot of profitable businesses, right? And we assessed a bunch of these, so we can get into kind of that process and whatnot. But electrical had some very compelling, uh, like tailwinds to it. And, then I have a background, um, you know, we found a third co-founder, right? So that there were two of us. We found a third co-founder, with the C10 license, with, years of experience in the trade itself. And, talked that through, found a good fit. And then, we started our own company.
Okay. So obviously you had some experience with electrical, coming out of school. You were working on, the Boeings and all this type of stuff, working with wiring. But you got into a group where you're looking at starting a business, trying to make it big. It sounds like you guys were, looking at the apps a little bit and you were in that area doing some marketing for a little while. Then you guys kind of sat around, you decided you wanted to do something different. So why did you guys want to get into this industry specifically?
Yeah, great question. There's so I could talk to you for multiple podcasts about this, right? Um, so there's going to be a need for 500,000 electricians over the next 2 years, and this is like Meta and Google and all the data center hyperscalers are projecting numbers like this, right? The amount of capital committed to like building out the data center infrastructure, which includes power generation. There's some transmission. There's like a full power stack that needs investment in. It's $700 billion this year, right? Like we've never seen that. The grid capacity has essentially stayed consistent for like the last like 25 years. In fact, it's dipped down a little bit. And then now we're saying we need to build an additional 60% in the next few years. And then by 2050, we want to triple it. Right. So it's crazy what's going in. This is just data centers, right? So this is like AI. All right. But then there's still, this idea of green energy and electrification, right? So that's another component. And that is like more of like a steady, slow burn, right?
Yeah,
In California here, right? Like, every other house has solar on it. Uh, Although interestingly, there's more installed solar capacity in Texas than California, but we can get into that, right?
I
But
didn't know
but
that.
it's yeah, I mean it's surprising, right? Because it like the economics can be very compelling depending how your utility is functioning. So
Mhm.
that is a big component, right? Electric vehicles are all over the place now, of course, right? And then there's all kinds of offshoots of this. So um, when you have solar, and we're facing this problem in California, right? So when you have solar, you're generating power during the day, almost like when you're not at home when you don't need it, and then you're asking for power from the grid when you do need it at night when no power is being generated, at least by solar, right?
Mhm.
Because of that, California redid their laws, and so they changed how much they pay you for solar. So essentially, they force you to put energy storage on site. So you get a battery, something like that. Um, but now everyone is driving a battery around, right? So this requires a different setup to enable your car to store your solar and then power your house at night. Okay, it requires a different setup than just having solar or solar plus a battery, right? So um, there are a lot of these kind of green energy electrification um, angles as well. In fact, not to bore you with more like code, but California, green energy requirements this year are forcing a shift from gas to more, yeah, electric appliances and heating cooling solutions, right? So I think while that's mandated in California, there is like a shift more broadly towards that type of power supply. And then the last thing is just it's kind of similar to AI, but it's more like Internet of Things. That was really big, probably 15 years ago, and it's like, hey, your toaster's gonna talk to your fridge, and like they're all gonna know what time you're coming home or something like that. Um, I think the value prop there hasn't been the best, but we are seeing a lot of cool things with smart homes and especially on the commercial side. That's where we see it. You have to have like as far as access controls, you got to know who's going into what room, right? As far as HVAC goes, right? You have a huge building. You don't want to be heating and cool like you don't want to run your heating and cooling at 100% when only 10% of your workforce is there, right? Um, so we see a lot more of it there, but folks that we just had a build out the other day. A lot of folks in regular homes they love the convenience of just being able to talk to Alexa or Google and be like, all right, hey, get to home, get my house nice and cool, get the lights set up and these other things. So we're seeing those three areas is really strong longer term plays for growth in the industry.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, so again, the barriers to entry are just as low. Well, they're still relatively low. And then it's like, okay, well, what trade do you want to do? I think
Yeah.
hands down, it's electrical.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. So, like you kind of mentioned, it sounds like there's three really big opportunities. There's AI with data centers and all that type of stuff. There's green renewable energy, which is like solar panels, EV chargers, etc. And then there's also smart home and tech, because we're seeing a massive boom in technology right now. And yeah, like we can kind of see like the smart fridges and security systems and all this type of stuff starting to evolve. But I'm sure even like 5, 10 years from now, there's going to be a whole new wave of tech that people are going to want to implement into their homes that they need an electrician to help them with. So I guess out of these three opportunities, how are you guys positioning yourselves for those? Is there one that you're specifically, looking at? And you're like, this is where we're headed, or are you guys trying to like, really feel out which one is best as time goes on? What are you guys currently doing with this knowledge?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's like 3 tiers to the electrical industry. So there's the baseline tier, which is where you get in, right? Chucking a truck or whatever, right? So these are the owner operators, and they're doing a lot of the residential work. In the Bay Area, there's like 4,500 registered businesses. So there's a lot, and the barrier to entry is low, and so there's a lot of entrants. But remember, we need 500,000 electricians, in the next 2 years. So like that doesn't that doesn't scare us at all. Um, and then there's ways to differentiate yourself, of course. So we could talk about that. In the middle tier, then you get mid-sized firms. They do a lot of residential, but they're more productionized. There's a lot of franchises in this space. Mr. Electric is one of the biggest nationally, right? And so they'll have crews, maybe 10, 15 vans, depending how large they get, and they do they'll also do a lot of service contracts with apartments and other properties and some like light commercial, right? And then at the top end, then you get the Cupertino Electrics and the Rosendins and those sorts of players that are national. They're huge, and they are building those data centers, right?
Mm,
There's only a handful of those, right, in any given area. Um, yeah, we love to be there, but there is a road to follow to build that sort of capability. Um, so we have been focusing on transitioning from that first tier to that second tier. So we've been taking on more and more of the commercial work and really establishing those relationships. The kind of maintenance, the service agreements, the maintenance contracts to manage, improve, maintain like larger properties and that sort of thing.
mhm.
So our goal is to like we want to move from being the guts to the brains, right?
Yeah,
So pulling wire and installing meters and panels, it's great, right? Like and it requires expertise. Um, it needs to be done very safely. That's why electrical is the most. It's like the most regulated of all the trades because like that's the one that can kill people, right?
yeah.
So yeah, right. So safety has to be the utmost priority, and you got to know what you're doing. Um, from there, we want to be like I said, the brains, and the brains are the control systems. The brains are really like finding customers who have unique energy needs and requirements, and then designing systems that fit those needs, right? So that's where we're pushing towards next, and then we'll see, right? Like we're always looking for the right talent to take us to the right next step as we kind of look out in the future, and we're like, well, like we see data centers as um, not so much a north star, but a huge engine for the entire industry that creates opportunities, up and down.
I see. So from what it sounds like, to get your business into the position to really catch these tailwinds is just trying to get from, instead of doing these small mom and pop jobs that are very necessary and they need skill and you need to be a good electrician and there's a place for that. You guys are trying to get some of these bigger jobs, going more commercial and then seeing how things kind of scale from there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So What are you guys currently doing to, because I feel like there's a lot of electricians out there that are small, they have a small crew with them. Maybe it's 5 to 10 guys, or maybe it's just themselves, and they're trying to grow their business from just doing those, like you kind of said, like the stage 1, small mom and pop jobs to get to the stage 2. What are you guys currently doing to get you from the stage 1 to stage 2? How are you guys finding these bigger jobs, these bigger contracts?
But let's talk about three different things. Okay. The first is being excellent, right? So wherever you enter, you want to like own and over deliver on. So if you look at our reputation, and what that does is allows you to build a reputation, right? So if you look at our digital reputation, there was one client who left a 4-star review um, many moons ago, right? But everything else is 5 stars. Um, so that means doing the job right. But from the customer's perspective, that's kind of like driving the bus, right? So we really focus on strong communication, laying out expectations, and then always meeting and exceeding those expectations. Okay. So that's the first pillar. So be good where you're at. And then the next two are on the business side. So it's operations and then the marketing piece. Operationally, Michael, my business partner, can talk more about that. There's three of us. And so, Michael really takes care of the program management, and like thinking more at a high level, manager level about the operations. And then we have our C10 who ensures that we execute. Right? Um, but operationally, that means getting the right uh, right type of talent, and then deploying that talent in a way that makes sense for your like service mix. Right? You have a bunch of these installs or you know some troubleshooting jobs, right? You're going to deploy different technical assets to perform that work than you will some of your larger commercial build outs and um, upgrades, right? So so we think about making sure that we have the right talent, right, and we use them in the right way. And then on the marketing side, it's different reaching these clients. um this is it's a challenging piece. We've tried a few different things, and we've gone, um we've done things on the digital side as far as like, let's be on TikTok, or let's do Facebook and that sort of thing, right? Which I think that if you invest in any avenue, you will get some return. It's just like, what is the time to return, and what's the cost in both time and money, right? Like your own time investment, or you're spending cash to get someone else's time. So what we found is like building those relationships is fundamental, right? Um, when a client gives you a job, they are, you know, uh, they must have some level of trust to hire you, right? And that is something that you can establish in part through these relationships, and really, um, like building that out. So that there's a lot of stuff in the Bay Area that we make sure that we attend, um, and we see a lot of the same people. Um, and then the circle can be small. So with our current clients, they'll know potential future clients and that sort of thing. And there's referrals. There's like I said, you build relationships organically, or through these different conferences and that sort of thing. We do still do things on the marketing side to so we have kind of a fundamental layer that we're trying to continue to push up, and this is the recurring revenue from some of our larger clients that have more consistent work. And then there's like, to fill any peaks and valleys there, then we'll use some of the digital marketing, some of the lead aggregators, and then we have our SEO, of course, that forms like a continuous pipeline.
Okay, so sounds like there's three main things to summarize it. There is going above and beyond for the jobs that you currently have to build that reputation, get referrals really going. I think that's a very important thing. It's not just doing the job, it's going above and beyond. And we'll touch on all three of these things. And then the second thing that you mentioned was having the right talent, right? Having the right people on your team to go execute these bigger jobs or even just the smaller jobs, just having the right people on your team. And then the third thing was relationships. And I do definitely have some questions about this third one here, but we'll start back at the very first one. So, what do you guys focus on and how do you teach your team, like the people who are going out there, who are on the field, who are doing the job, to really deliver an exceptional experience? What would you say that is for the people who are listening?
Yeah, I think a key differentiator is really the customer interaction. Um, so, we talked about, like, doing the job right is like driving the bus, right? Like, the bus driver, I guess they do give out awards for, like, no accidents for, some insane amount of distance driven. But, like, the analogy I think still holds, right? Um, if I give you a ride, Kevin, and we get from point A to point B, you're probably not like, "Oh, you didn't get in an accident, like, that's awesome, like, you're so great." Right? It's like, "Of course you didn't get in an accident. That's why I wouldn't have asked you to drive me if I thought you're that type of person," right? Um, so, we try and instill in our team that that's table stakes, right? At that chuck and truck level, right, it is there okay, so there are 4,500 registered businesses, electrical businesses, roughly in the Bay Area. Not all of them are active. I've looked at how many I could find with reasonable digital footprints. It is a small fraction of that. So what that means to me is these are businesses that the owner may be doing other stuff on the side, but in that tier there is a higher concentration of folks who are not consistent, who don't do what they say they will, who don't show up on time, who don't follow through on jobs, who don't honor their work, right? So, like, that is something that, we require just, you know, as like a bus driving thing, but I don't know, like, some buses are better than others even, right? And then, with the customer interaction. So we use a field service management tool that helps streamline some of the communication. Helps with the scheduling, helps us make it clear when we're coming out to a job, provides any progress reports if there's it's a multi-day job, and so that helps set the expectation right. And then we always like for bigger jobs we're always trying to bid in person, right? There is like a push towards some of this digitization thing, and I think there are certain situations where it can make sense, where it's like, oh, give me a video call, and then I'll quote you and that sort of stuff. But we have focused on being face to face and starting and finishing every job with a person.
Okay. Sounds good. And then let's touch on topic number 2 that you brought up for the 3 main things you're doing to really grow and get you into that stage 2 of the business, which was having the right people around you. So, well, not having the right people around you, but just like having the right employees who are able to do what you guys need to do. So, I guess what are you guys doing to first of all find the right talent and ensure that they're a right fit for your team and right fit for your culture?
This is a great question. So, like, there's a couple of ways you can go about it, right? You could go and you could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to hire anybody off the street that is willing to, you know, sign on the dotted line, and I'm going to be really fast at firing them. Right?
Hmm.
You mess up one time, they get me a non 5-star review, right, out the door. That's one way. And then the other way is like the vetting process, right? Have some kind of rigorous thing. All right, you work for you know some subsistence wages for 6 months, and like you do these different side projects, and show me these training things, and then you vet really hard, and then you're much more likely to get someone that's good, right? Um, so we lean more towards the latter, but we don't put like a bunch of stupid hoops in there. We like to think, right? But we do. The industry is it's like tight knit, so we do highly value referrals, right? So getting that like tenant or getting like the first tech, right? That has like the skill set you need and is really good can be like it can open the door for getting a lot of other good talent because they'll know people who know people and that sort of thing. Um, yeah, some of our first hires were off of Indeed, right? So we use Indeed. You know, s- like sometimes when we need a surge like work, we work with a temp agency. Um, and so there's different ways that we've been able to kind of find folks, but the vetting is really important. And so we've improved like our interview process and even like we do some of that like a evaluation period type assessment.
Okay. And when you're doing these assessments, when you're doing your vetting, what is it exactly you're looking for?
Hmm. Exactly. So it depends on it depends on what we're trying to hire for, of course. So like we talked about those customer fundamentals and like the principles and values, right, of employees. That's everybody, right? Um, but as we're trying to grow into new markets, then we need the experience in those markets, right? We do like we're entrepreneurs, right? So we like entrepreneurs as well. The C10 license it's an electrical license, but it's also a business license, right? Like that, there's a business component to um, that qualification that holders must pass, and so like we always see that as a good sign. It's like um, this person has personal responsibility. C10 is a general electrical license. So essentially, you can work on anything electrical in the state of California. Um, and then from there, then we're like, okay, now do you have the experience in the types of jobs that we're trying to take on? Right.
Okay, amazing. And then touching on the third thing that you mentioned when you're trying to grow and get into a different component of the business was connections. So I'm kind of curious, when you mean connections, who are you trying to connect with and what are you guys really doing to make those connections?
Yeah, that's good, right? So there are there are threes, a lot of threes today. Okay, so
It's okay.
all right. So let's think about the three types of connections that we're after, right? So one is like general contractors, primes. Okay, these are the bigger firms that they program manage large projects and then they sub out all the work for um, you know various size build outs or new construction, right? But it tends to be in the mid to upper tier, of course. Right? So we want to build those connections. Um, and then the second group of folks are like property managers, right? So apartments are one, but there's property managers, right? And the terminology may differ, but they still manage real estate for landlords and owners, right? At the commercial level, right? So you do have apartments, but then you have commercial spaces that may host different businesses or offices or other industrials, and so you want to you know we want to build relationships with those folks, and that oftentimes overlaps with the real estate agents. Okay, um, and then the third tier there are owners themselves, and there are like developers. Right? So owners and developers, we want to build those relationships. So they are often the furthest removed, but they know the jobs that are coming up, and they can help guide and direct and plug us in. And end of the day, it's like it's your property, so you can determine if you have a good enough relationship. In other words, they trust you, right? Then they can put you on and say, "Hey, Prime, work with United Electrical Systems," right? And like, sure, yeah, no problem. You're the boss, and then it can lead to jobs that way.
Okay. And how are you guys making these connections? What are you guys actively doing to get your name out there, have those conversations, and make sure that you're leaving an impression that they're going to remember you and that connection is actually strong and solid?
Yeah, yeah. They're this is great because we're getting into the marketing piece a little bit. We have tried some different approaches. We did a lot of cold calling in the beginning, right? Um,
Mm.
yeah, and it didn't lead to it didn't lead to much. Okay. And then as we started building our own like brand and reputation, we started getting some GCs and other clients reaching out to us. Like that's cool, right? And so we have tried to double down on that space and be like more targeted with our marketing spend so that we're reaching like those types of clients that we want to focus on as this current phase of growth. And then as far as the face to face that you were asking, there are a bunch of events in the Bay Area, and I know every metro has something like this, right? Where whether it's your chamber of commerce, there are a lot of like construction trade groups. There are a lot of uh, like uh, like sessions where like really large entities, think universities, hospital systems, they will have their own events to encourage contractors to come together and get to know each other. And so we you know pound the pavement and go and attend those.
So it sounds like there's out of the three things that you mentioned that helping you grow and get you to that second stage, the first and the third thing sound like they're almost working with each other. As you mentioned, when you're making the connections, you're trying to do cold calls and cold approaches. Didn't really get too much out of that, but because you were delivering an exceptional experience, which is the first thing that you mentioned, that feeds into the connections you're making. It's getting your name out there. People are starting to trust you. More important businesses are reaching out to you, and those are the people you want to make connections with, which kind of help you grow and scale, through that third channel, which is the connections.
Yes, there are synergies across these categories that we're talking through, um, which I guess kind of underscores the importance of. I mean, for square one, like do the job and do the job well. Uh, and that puts you in the ball game to capture some of these other opportunities. And I will say that's true at every level though, right? So like you get new opportunities, and then it's not like, oh well, look, we got 105-star reviews or whatever, so like we're good. It's like, no, no, you're moving in a different class, and now you have to build reputation among that class for your capability and quality.
Mm, well said. So this has been a great conversation. There's a ton of value in this. So we'll wrap it up
Yeah.
here. I'll ask you one last question. It's a little bit different of a question than what we've kind of been talking about during this podcast, but this is the question I ask everybody before we finish up. But if you could go back to day one when you first started the business in the electrical space, with everything you know now, what's one thing you would tell your younger self then?
Wow. Okay. There's a bunch of tactical things, right? Um, yeah, running a business, I think it's one of the most rewarding things you can do, but it's very hard for like different reasons than going to work, right? there is, especially electrical, there's many different elements of this. We have 3 owners, right? And it still keeps us busy, right? So if you are just an owner operator, you wanna think about what you are not picking up and whether that aligns with your goals for your business. As long as you have a strong core, like your vision is there, your values are there, and you live up to them, or at least, constantly and aggressively are pursuing them, then, you're doing a lot of the things right, or you will figure them out. Um, one thing I would switch around, semi-tactical, we can probe deeper if we want some sort of like profound, nugget. I'm sure there's some stuff there, right? But it is like the people first like mindset. And we knew that from the customer, but we didn't think about that from our employees, right? Because how you treat your employees and the relationship, you know, that they have to the company and how they view the company and how that supports and fits in with their goals for life and their families and that sort of thing affects how they show up on the job and then ultimately how the customer experiences it. Right? And then on the relationship side, our client side, right? We had this, tech mindset of, oh, digital marketing and all you gotta do is Google and Facebook and this and that. And it's like, um, I think I want to say I was maybe misled a little bit, but about the sophistication of electricians in this region. Yeah, a lot don't advertise, and it's word of mouth. They're kind of mom and pop shops or lifestyle businesses, as you will. That they're not focused on growth, right? They kind of find a niche and some referral network, and they're like, cool. Um, but there are plenty who know how to use the internet, okay, and use it really well. Um, and there's still a big part of the industry that is old school in that way, where it's like, dude, like I don't. You can hit me with your ad 10 times. Like I don't know you. I don't know who is running this business. I don't know that person, right? And so, they're never going to become a client that way. So, you know, um, yeah, like that would be the big piece is like not just people first, but people, people, people.
Yeah. So to
Yeah.
digest that really you know, it's like people first, yes, you understood that, but it's not about your clients, it's also about your employees. Because that's going to make a large impact with how they show up to work, how they treat the customers, how much trust they have in the business that they're with. And if it's what they're really wanting to do, they're happy. And then it's also not all about the tactics and the ads. And it's like, it doesn't matter how good your Google ads are and your Facebook ads are, that will get you some jobs, that will get you some traffic. But if you're really trying to grow, if you're trying to get into different industries in the space, you need a lot more than just, you know, good Facebook and meta ad strategy, which I understand that.
100%, man.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Before we hop off here, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or touch on?
Shoot, I think we covered a lot, and it's like an honor to come on and kind of share a little bit about our company and how we think about things. So, thanks for the invite. Um, have us back if there's other topics to go through. There's two other owners. They focus on different areas. I have my little space, and so you can really get technical if you want with our C10, or if you want to understand the operations piece really deeply, then Michael on the operations side can take you there. Um, I think the one thing that I'll leave you and your listeners with is again, like the size of the opportunity. Like we've never seen something like this. AI in particular. We talked about the three pillars, right? Like two of those are more like steady growth, right? Look at solar adoption. It's strong, but like linear. Um, China is a big driver of that. They have as much solar like generating capacity as our entire grid almost, right? So like the capability is there to do that sort of thing. But AI is the exponential growth trajectory. And so, we were talking about, the big players, the Cupertino Electrics, building out those data centers, but it affects the entire industry. So if you're like, I don't know, like, what trade should I get into? Or, should I start this business? I would say, well, what other business are you starting? Are you starting the next NVIDIA, or are you, creating a new AI foundation model? Okay, maybe go do that. But, if you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go," maybe I'm looking at roofing. I would lean very strongly in electrical because the way that the industry works is, the headroom at the top will create headroom at the bottom. We talked about, like, housing supply as an analogy for that. So if there's a ton of demand for mansions, well, your, like, everyday home builders, they're gonna try and move up and start to build out that mansion supply. Who's gonna start doing the mid-tier, and then who's gonna do the entry level, right? So there's gonna be opportunity all across the space and, for folks that are interested, um, outside of the Bay Area. But, we welcome competition, of course. But, I'd recommend jumping in.
So where can our listeners find you online? Is there social medias you have or website links?
Right on, yeah, so you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on, we have a YouTube page, we have the one I'd recommend the most is just go to our website, so it's www.unitedelectricalllc.com, so that's 3 L's in a row. Um, it gives you all the information there, it'll link to everything that we're on, and, yeah, obviously, reach out if you have any questions or interested in any projects or, just wanna, chat and kinda understand how we're doing things on anything that we covered here or else.
Okay. Amazing. And like I mentioned at the beginning, if you're in the space and you think you'd be a good fit to come on to this show, go to our website at theelectriciangrowthpodcast.com, fill out the application. If you think you'll be a good fit, we'll reach out, we'll have that conversation, and you could be on the podcast next. All right, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Take care, Kevin.